Space. The final frontier. These are your adventures as you explore, seeking out new life and civilizations, expanding your borders and exploiting the resources you find, befriending allies, or exterminating the foes that get in your way.
Contact detected entering sector. Configuration unknown. Assessing. Initiating countermeasures.
Well, why wait those 5 seconds? Let's jump right in. Hi there, everybody. My name is Tony. Welcome to Star Trek New Worlds, the place, the date, the location of strategic conference and excitement. This is Star Trek New Worlds, a turn-based strategy game that we play online here with you, using the magic of Vassal to populate the map. And, of course, we play it with the rule set, or inspired by the rule set of Federation and Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. I say inspired by because at this point we have made so many changes in house rules to the original F&E rules that, well, it's almost a different game. But thank you for joining us here on this wonderful Saturday morning here Pacific time on the west coast of North America, depending on where you are coming from, wherever you are in the world. I know we have players in down under Australia, across the pond over in the UK, and around the world and across North America. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. In today's episode, we're going to be diving into the campaign that is now in full effect and stereo sound. We're going to show you a number of different examples in 2 of those 3 campaigns. For a reminder, we have Event Horizons is the 3 games as a package. New Horizons is one game that we're going to be talking about today. We also have Imperial Stars and Splintered Will. We're going to be talking about the 2 of those campaigns, which is New Horizons and Splintered Will, today, based on the fact that we have a number of different maps from a number of different players who have been kind enough to share with us what they're doing, where they are in the game. So we'll go into that. We'll talk about where they're at, what they're doing, and so on. And you'll get to see the strong contrast between these 2 different games. One with a completely different start set of EP criteria, just different resources to be able to start the game, and the other, like I say, a different approach, different play style. So we're gonna talk about those 2 different campaigns and the start so far in those games. If you haven't joined us in a live stream ever before, then please feel free to familiarize yourself with the screen here now. We've got in between me and the chat, you've got that QR code, which you can use your phone and go boop, and that will take you to that link down in the corner, Star Trek New Worlds, or coffee.com/New Worlds. And there you can send us not a disruptor, no more. It is a photon torpedo of goodness, caffeinated goodness that will keep us stimulated, motivated, and spitting the truth when it comes to the exciting, delighting things on the campaign. However, if coffee is not your style and you're looking for something more material, then please feel free head over to stnewworlds.com and you can get yourself your own pint-sized refreshing goodness, whether it's New Worlds, New Horizons, Splintered Will, or Imperial Stars. Either way, whichever taste suits your fancy the best, you can head over there and check that out. And of course, if you have followed us along here and you enjoy what we're doing, then you can be like Zelenoth there and hit the subscribe button and join our community here online every Saturday, talking about what is new and great in the campaign. Let's start off with some exciting and delighting details when it comes to this campaign. We're going to start off with a quick recap of Splintered Will. Here we go. All right, everybody. So welcome to the table. Our GMs are very detail-oriented individuals, and boy, do they provide the data. Here you can see on the screen we have a table of randomized players. We don't know who's who in the zoo, but you can see here based on turn 25 turns into the game, we have a set of EP, which is the amount of money that each player is making. So you can see we've got a range here between 71 to 41 when it comes to the range of EP. The attack and defense there that you see on that table, that is a culmination or a combination of all the potential attack factors and defense factors that the player has in their fleet. And as you can see, there is quite a variety. On the low end, you've got player 1 with only 2 attack factors and 45 defense. Very interesting to see what that's all about. And then on the high end, you've got individuals with 47, 49 attack. And interesting to note, player number 10 with 49 attack and 114 defense factors. Very, very interesting. Of course, the next hex, or the next column over, talks about the number of hexes explored. You can see there is quite a variety, with the low end being 43 hexes explored, the high end being 111. And of course, there's quite a range in between. You can also see the maximum distance from their capital hex as far as how far they've explored out. You can see here the range. Again, the individual player number 4, who's at the lowest number of hexes explored, only 5 hexes out from their capital, whereas the player with the maximum number of hexes explored, player number 10, has gone as far as 9 hexes out. Whoa! Ladies and gentlemen, a photon torpedo has been fired. A coffee has been sent our way. What is going on? It would seem as though the Gorn have decided to caffeinate our goodness today. So thank you very much to the slippery, slimy, scaly Gorn, depending on which iteration of the Gorn you prefer. Cheers. No ears. Oh, yeah. All right, so that photon torpedo. Oh, another one. Oh, my goodness. Not to be outdone by the Gorn, another mystery antagonist has fired a coffee our way. Oh, my goodness gracious. Let me take a quick sip. I'm already salivating at the idea of more caffeinated goodness. All right. Woo! Here we go. All right, last column in this table, we're going to talk about exploration fleets. That's the number of fleets that are going out and exploring the strange new world. After all, this is a 4X game, and part of it is expand your borders. In order to do that in this game, you've got to explore those fog of war hexes, sort of lift that fog of war, find out what's underneath, and expand your reach out into the galaxy. So you can see here that player number 2 and 3 and 5 have 11 exploration fleets, with, of course, player number 10 with 10 of those exploration fleets. Interesting to note that the folks, I suppose it's not so interesting, but in the sense that you would expect the ones with the greatest number of exploration fleets to have the greatest number of hexes explored. And of course, we can see that those with 10 or 11 have, on the ballpark, the higher number of hexes explored, with player number 2 and number 3 over 100 hexes explored. Player number 10, of course, at the at the top end with 111. Very interesting to see. All right, let's talk about the map in question. Now, I will say this. There is a limit on Vassal. There's only so many of these maps that I can open at any one time. So I'm going to have to juggle as we go through. So let's see how this goes as we slide over to the map. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh, I'm a little more focused. Let me jump on this chair so my head doesn't keep floating around. Woo! And here we are on the map in Splintered Will for the Carnavon. Interesting to see, isn't it? Look at how much reach we've got. Let's take a quick look at some of the key data points, starting with EP. So with slide EP here, you can see that the Carnavon have 65.5 EP. If I look over, that looks like player number 1 on our previous table, if you want to slide back and take a look. So this is the Carnavon with 65.5 EP. And again, this is turn 25. Well, technically 26, the start of turn 26, but 25 turns completed in the game so far. Let's peel back some of these layers so you can see what's going on. This, without any ships or bases on the map, this is what we're looking at. And boy, there's quite a collection of planets. You can see here, my goodness, we've got two major planets, one labeled tennis ball, very interesting. So 2 major planets, a number of minor planets, looks like, if I'm counting this right, 2. 3. Oh, another coffee has been fired. Oh, my goodness gracious. More caffeinated goodness coming our way. Here we are. Lord Lawless has fired a coffee. Cheers, Lord Lawless. Here we are. Okay, so we are slamming into the Carnavon here with 3 minor planets, 2 major planets. It looks like at least 3 medium planets. 1, 2, developing, and a number of colonies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 colonies as I kept. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colonies. Excuse me. Wow, that's a lot. And then, of course, a number of resources here. So if you're ever wondering and you're playing this game, you're like, how do I break that down? There's a little table here that will talk to us about the number of planets, resources, and so on. So we can see that there is 11 resources that are available. And from the planet perspective, well, we can just break that down with the number of planets that we have here and that you can see. So very interesting to see the amount of resources in this particular game. This is in stark contrast to New Horizons, which you will see shortly, is a completely different starting philosophy. So 65.5 EP. For context, in the New Worlds campaign, our previous campaign, there were factions in the very late stages of the game that were only floating around 60 to 70 EP at the end of the game. So imagine at the very early stages of the game having that level of income. That's what we're seeing here and now. Let's bring back the bases so we can see what's here. A little harder to make out because, of course, green on green. But you can see here there's a number of bases that are being built. Just above tennis ball, we have a YBS, and of course to the right of it as well, another YBS. We have 2 that are within 2 hexes of the capital system or the capital homeworld. And we've got some planetary ground bases, which are no big deal. And then we've got some bases heading to the north, YBS 1, 2, and 3 in the northerly direction. So it looks like a total of 7 YBS is built. And of course, a number of different planets out there. Now, one thing to note when playing this game, colonies are not a supply point when it comes to assessing supply in this game. Now, we can check this out by when we look at the Carnavon supply. This is the reach of supply for the Carnavon, assuming, and I'll set the supply to 2. So assuming supply 2, which is not unreasonable at this point of the game, in fact, most likely, you can see that this is the reach of supply for the Carnavon. You can see there's a number of hexes, obviously, they have supply into that are still fog of war hexes. But you can notice it's very interesting, the bottom right here, the southeasterly quadrant, and even to the south, not as much reach down there, but obviously they've reached the edge of their ability to explore in those areas. If we bring back the ships, boom, you can see all the exploration fleets out and about. And if we pull up the Carnavon, let's see, exploration fleets, you can see here, this is what they've got: large exploration freighters with a prime team in each. So 9 of their exploration fleets have the prime team with a large exploration freighter in them. Now, if you do not, in this game, if you do not have a survey ship or cruiser of some type, I say survey cruiser. Some factions have it as a destroyer, like the Hydrons. So there's different size classes of ship, but if you have shall we say, a survey warship, then you must place your prime teams on those survey warships versus the YFELs. Now, why is that important? Because a YFEL only costs you $6 or 6 EP to build, and the survey ships, depending on what they are, cost more. It can range, depending on the tech level, between, I believe, 8, 9, or 10, depending on the late stage of the game. But nonetheless, they are more expensive, more costly. But, of course, they have weapons. That's always a good thing. And they can move faster, go different distances. So, for example, if you have a W or a Y era, it can travel 3 or 4 hexes respectively. And, of course, as you get into the M era and beyond, they can move 6. So and that is opposed to the YFEL, which only moves 1 hex at a time. So you could conceivably have yourself sort of stuck in a dead spot of exploration with a YFEL and having to spend a couple turns to sort of get yourself out of there. But if you manage it properly, you can stay as optimal as possible when it comes to your exploration. So that's what that looks like here. What do you think? The dogs in green are out and about, marking their territory across the galaxy, and this is what it looks like. How does this compare to what you would do potentially in this game? Well, let's slide over to the next faction. So this faction is the alternate Federation. So in this particular vassal module, we have the Federation in blue, and then we have an alternate Federation faction, which is, in this case, the orange colored. And there's a couple of interesting things about this faction, or at least this map, that it's going to be interesting to point out. Let me just close this first and get back into, like I said, I can only have so many vassal maps open at a time. So let me, and something's about to load. Oh, there we go. We'll just close that for a sec while it loads. Okay, so here we are. We have the alternate Federation, and they are expanding. Let's take a look at their EP and where they are at. Slide this over. Okay, so the Federation 2, you can see here I have 66 EP. That is right here. So 66 EP, that's pretty good, considering that the Carnavon we were just looking at, we're at 65.5. So that's a very good number. And let's take away the ships and the bases, and we can see the distribution of their stuff. Maybe a little bit easier to see with the orange as a contrast. You can see here you've got 1, 2 major planets, 1, 2, 3, 4 minors, 1, only 1. Interesting. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 minors, 1 medium planet, 2 majors. We talked about that. And then colonies, or developing planets. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 medium planets, and a number of colonies here. 1, 2. Interesting. So slightly different distribution. Slightly different distribution of resources, but of course it adds up to the same in the sense that they have 66 EP versus the 65.5 of the Carnavon. Let's bring in their bases, and you can see that they have a different strategy completely. So we have, this star in the center is their capital system, and 2 hexes out to the northwest, you can see they have a YDK. Now, why is a YDK different than a YBS? If you've never played with us before, the YDK is sort of an early era starbase. And what can it do? It has obviously more attack and defense. 8 attack, 16 defense versus the 4 attack, 8 defense of the YBS. It can also repair up to 8 points of damage versus the 2 of the YBS. It has more EW capacity, meaning that If you were in the later stage of the game having to fight with EW, you have more capacity with a YDK to up the ante when it comes to the amount of EW points that you can generate. Not too much of a concern at this early point in the game. And in this particular campaign, what's important about YDKs? They can build a YFF or WFF, but they can build a early era frigate on their own. Only one per turn, but they can build a frigate. Now that is, as in previous games, that was constrained by the number of slipways you had. So for example, if you had 3 frigate slipways, you could only ever build 3 frigates at a starbase or YDK, as the case may be. However, in this game, the YDK is a standalone small slipway, for all intents and purposes, able to build a frigate on its own. So very interesting that this player has decided to invest in that with a number of YDKs operational. Now, interesting to note the reach, or the sort of the distance here. You've got 2 hexes away from the capital to the northwest for this YDK in 1314. Again, all these little maplets aren't the number of the hexes isn't relative to anything else on a bigger map. This is totally self-contained on its own little maplet here. On the bottom, you'll notice, so this is a major planet here, and 2 hexes down from that, we've got another YDK in the southern position at 1518. Now this one up in the top right corner here, in the northeasterly corner, is 3 hexes away. Interesting. So this, you can see here, is a minor planet. This minor planet is a supply node, and it can provide supply out to perhaps 3 hexes if their supply is at 3. Now, interesting to note that these two are within 2 hexes of a major supply node, and this one is 3. Why is that important? If you haven't already checked out the tutorial on reaction movement, which is in the playlist below on the channel, then I recommend you go check that out, because extended reaction allows you to move ships in response to an enemy 2 hexes out, or up to 2 hexes out. So for example, if you had ships on your capital hex and this YDK was attacked, depending on the circumstances, you could move ships from here in reaction to support the YDK in defense of it. Same thing below, and of course moving ships from the YDK to the capital to defend the capital. This YDK in the northeast section, oh, ladies and gentlemen, another coffee has been fired. You keep those coffees coming. I'll keep stimulated. Let's keep this going. Quick sip for the celebration. Who sent that to you? Pekka Khan and his people approved the Okok. Pekka Khan is, well, we're going to talk about the Paravians in this campaign in the next little bit, but the Paravians are quite prolific with their Woody Woodpecker-esque personality. So, yes. Okay, so we've got the Federation here with this 3 hexes away YDK. And the other thing, let's just pull up the ship so we can touch on that before we touch on the other color on the map. So you can see the number of exploration fleets out and about here. Let's pull up the Federation 2 exploration fleets. Battle fleets, battle group, carrier, auxiliary fleets. Oh, there we are, exploration fleets. All right, so you can see here, oh, wow. Okay, so for example, the Federation has a survey ship. You can see here the WSR. The WSR is a light cruiser hull, and it is a 2-attack, 4-defense ship. I believe it's a light cruiser hull. Someone will have to confirm that for me. I believe it's a light cruiser hull, because that looks like the light cruiser ship type. And you can see here you got a YFES, which is a small exploration freighter, a large one, and then all the rest of these are bought and paid for survey cruisers with a prime team embarked, giving them a prime team gives you a +1 in your role to be able to uncover a fog of war hex or survey a hex. So the WSR or any survey cruiser has the same chances as a YFEL. With the prime team embarked, it allows you the best possible chance to uncover those hexes. So interesting that the Federation player, like the Carnavon player, has invested in putting a prime team on every single one of these survey ships to try and give it the maximum capability to explore or uncover fog of war hexes. Interesting. All right. Now, and I should also mention another thing. Even though we see a couple bases being built, what is the limitation here? You'll notice that there's a bunch of convoys floating around, no tugs. Certain factions get tugs earlier or later, depending, and the convoy is the only way that you can build a base, or anything for that matter, in the early era before you have a tug. The problem is that you can only execute one tug mission at a time when it comes to a convoy. So in this game, you can see here we have a number of convoys floating around, but a convoy can only execute a tug mission one at a time, meaning that one convoy can only build one base at one time, and all the other convoys are basically treading water until that convoy is complete and the next convoy can begin. So, yes, he's taking his convoys, pre-positioning them potentially, and either providing extended supply or building a base, as the case may be. Now, what else do we see on this map? Well, on the far right, you can see two things. One, there is a red resource, meaning it is a resource from another faction. And two, there's a neutral zone border. So what does that mean? In the context of this game, when you explore a hex, you might come across, like you would in normal sea-based navigation in the modern era, you might come across a buoy, meaning a marker of some type that will communicate to you something about the waterway. In this case, you've got, the narrative is, you've got space buoys that will broadcast, notify, inform you of a neutral zone, meaning you're coming close to it and it will provide you information and or warning you're entering X nations or factions space, be aware. And so you choose to either ignore that or, stop at the border. Obviously, this player ignored that and went into the red space here, which I'm going to guess is the Tholians, because the Tholians is the big baddie in this campaign, the former rulers of the galaxy, which have fallen and splintered into various factions, which we are all playing. And so here we are with the Tholians' resources right there. So interesting to note, that's what that looks like. Interdasting. So this player is the first player that we've seen encounter a neutral zone and another, in this case, non-player faction. How are they responding? We've already noted that there are no effective warships here. If we look at fleet cap, by example, the Federation has 47 attack, 86 defense, and we break that down, and it's basically all exploration fleets. 2 ship equivalents with a 4-8, which is those are off-board. I don't know. Oh, maybe they're mothballed? Not sure. But we don't really have any significant warships. We have a WCL and a WFF. And that's, and there's a second fleet here, which has a YCL, YCA, and a YFF. So we have a combination of 5 warships, 2 frigates, 2 cruisers, 1 light, 1 heavy. 3 cruisers, 2 light, 1 heavy. And 2 of those ships being in the W era versus the Y era. So we know that they've got Y ships up and about. And the last thing, we can see they got a diplomat on their homeworld. And if I take away their bases and ships real quick, well, let's go into Fed to Capital. You can see that the homeworld has an I next to it, meaning it's indifferent. This is a planetary attitude thing. The more your planetary attitude increases, going towards a happy versus a negative, meaning an unhappy state, happy plus, or H plus, as you will see on the map, provides an economic boost depending on the size of the planet. So if we're on a capital, normally providing you 10 EP, at an H plus, it'll provide you 12, by example. And that scales down for different planets. And I think the difference, really, the metric difference is it only starts to make a difference at minor planets and above. And then there we are. So very interesting to note here, the encounters of the alternate federation. All right, let's jump into, let's zoom in. And as you can see here, there we go. This is the true Gorn, so to speak. The Gorn faction within Splintered Will. So very interesting to look at this faction. Of course, different color palette. Let's take away the bases and the ships real quick. And we can see a very different distribution of planets than we saw in the other two. Obviously, still lots of them, but we can see here there's only one, if I'm catching this right, major planet on this map. Note that it's also Happy Plus, which is good to note because I believe that gives it, I'll have to check the stats, but I believe it gives it an extra 1 EP. Now let's take a look at the capital for the Gorn. I bet you they're Happy Plus. Yep, there you go, Happy Plus, and a YDK at their homeworld. Interesting. Ooh, and an R&D team. Okay, so let's take a look here. We've got one major planet at a Happy Plus. When it comes to medium planets, I see 1, 2, 3. 3 medium planets, which is great. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 minor planets, 2 developing planets, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colonies. 6 colonies. But don't trust my math. Let's pull it up on the real deal, Holyfield. You can see the Gorn here have a total EP of 64, so right in the sweet spot here between 65.5, 66, and 64, all in the same ballpark. And you can see that they're expanding by leaps and bounds. If we pull up the Gorn supply, and assuming supply 2, again, supply 2, you can see as we bring back the bases, the coverage that they have on the unexplored hexes that they still have sort of within reach. As we brought back the bases there, and I'll turn off the supply menu just because it can be a little distracting, you can see 1, 2, 3 YBSs. So they have a YDK. Oh, excuse me, there's another one up here. 1, 2, 3, 4 YBSs. And of course, they have a YDK on their homeworld. So, and again, interesting on the distribution here. You can see that this major planet, which is in 1516, so I'll just move that guy there. You can see that's that planet, major planet there. Within 2 hexes is this YBS. Within 2 hexes of the capital in the sort of northwest, we've got this base about to be completed. And then sort of far to the northeast and northeast, we've got these 2 bases on the edge. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they are not within reaction range of anything substantive. Yes, this minor planet is within extended reaction of this base. Interesting to note. And it looks like this player is fundamentally using bases to fill in the gaps of supply for their reach for exploration, which makes total sense. And if we pull up the exploration fleets, woo, there's quite a few of them. Let's pull up the exploration fleets. Woo! How many have we got here? Well, we got quite a few fleets. It looks like 13 exploration fleets. Okay, and you can see he's got a survey ship. It's called it's referred to as the WSL, a W era survey leader. I think it might be a frigate hull or maybe a destroyer hull. But either way, you can see that he's got the survey ship paired with a YFF, which is great, an escort, and a prime team. So we've got protected survey ships with the best possible chance of exploring and finding what they're looking for. In addition, we can see on the fleet cap here that the Gorn have second Gorn fleet. So let's take a look at second Gorn fleet and what they've got there. Ooh. So they've got a fleet, a YCL, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frigates. So let's just stack those guys so we make it a little easier. So a total of 5 frigates and a YCL sitting there in their second fleet, which you'll note is right up here next to this convoy. So interesting to note. Now, no boundaries, no borders, no one that they've bumped into as of just yet. So we'll have to see how this evolves going forward. But again, turn 26, very comparable when it comes to EP. The footprint is similar, but interesting to note just kind of like where the exploration has happened. A lot of exploration to the south and southeast, northeast, but not a lot in the northwest. That's probably just the way the rolls went. 1, 2, 3, like 1, 2, 3. Wow, 3 to 4 hexes out. That's as far out as we go when it comes to the northwest. So interesting to see sort of the dynamic here as we go. I'm going to slide back to the table here as we just look at this while I pull up another one of these maps. And let's see here. So that was the Gorn. Let's pull up those dirty Hydrons. We know who they are. And we'll pull up the ISC as well. It just takes me a little second because I said it seems as though there's a hard limit in Vassal on how many of these maps I can open at any one time, challenging though that may be. Our GMs have been so fantastic to provide me so many maps that I'm sort of overloaded with the number of maps that I can populate at any one time. Great problems to have, so to speak. All right, so let's see here. What do we got? Zoom in there. Bring that down. Oh, that's the Gorn. We already did the Gorn. So we'll close that one. And then we've got the Hydrons, those dirty, dirty Hydrons. We know who the Hydrons are. And then we've got the ISC, who are next. And I'm loading those guys up now as we speak. It's just taking a second because Vassal is a wonderful tool. All right, here we go. So let's slide over. We'll check out the ISC first, and then we'll slide into a couple others as we go. Can I go any closer? There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, let's slide over. All right, here we are. We can see this is the ISC in turn 26 of Splintered Will. And we can see here a sort of like a star or reaching out pattern. It's like Casper the Ghost with his arms outspread. Very interesting. Let's take a quick look. We'll pull away the ships and the bases so you got a better look. We'll pull up EP so we can have a good look at how much money these guys are making. And the ISC, as we scroll down here, at 66 EP. So right smack dab in the middle of the statistical norm when it comes to the number of EP that they're making. Now, what's interesting to note about this campaign, as we mentioned before, all these maps are not procedural. They're not being generated as you explore. The GM pre-populated these maps with planets and various things and averaged it out so that every player has a similar number of EP. Okay. So knowing that, every player within their maplet should probably have about the same number of EP. The question is, did the spaces that you explored and your ability to successfully explore those hexes, did you actually find what was already there? And so obviously, statistically, we've got quite a few players that have discovered everything they need to discover. And then, of course, we saw as according to the table, there's going to be a couple that don't. And we'll see one in a second here. All right, so let's take a look at these guys. You can see a number of major planets. So Happy Plus near the capital, this big boy up to the north, very interesting. Number of medium planets, I'm seeing 2, if my eyes don't deceive me. And then, of course, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 minor planets with 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, with 2 developing and 1, 2, 3 colonies and a number of resources. Interesting. But again, all manages out to 66 EP. Good to note that the ISC are improving their economy by improving their attitude. So the ISC capital, you can see here is a Happy Plus with a YDK, and of course that other major planet with a Happy Plus as well. So that gives them a plus 3 EP. Interesting to note that 66. If you took away that plus 3 EP, that would put them right back down to more in line with what we saw with the feds, the alternative feds there. So very interesting to see how everyone is managing their economy, and their planetary attitude is how that affects their EP. So we can see that here. Let's pull up the bases. Interesting base distribution. Look at this. So YDK all the way at the top, covering that major planet that was discovered. And other than that, we've got some far-reaching YBSs, and that's it. 1, 2, 3 YBSs at the very extremity of their exploration. We pull up the ships. You can see we've got exploration fleets working hard to explore, and it looks like based on the reach, these guys have, the IC that is, have 3 supplies. So let's pull up supply and set supply to 3. And this is what they can reach. So you can see here, they've got quite a reach to the north, reach out to the east and the west, and it looks kind of like a clover almost, the nodes of exploration that they've got there based on the bases that they've built and, of course, the planets and their supply network, as you can see there. So very interesting to see how that's sort of spread out in that way. And, of course, lots of opportunity for this particular player to keep expanding and keep growing. But, of course, they haven't bumped into anything or anyone yet, not like the Gorn, who bumped into the Tholians. So very interesting to see that. All right, let's check the Hydrons, these dirty Hydrons. In case you hadn't already guessed, the Hydron player is moi, and it's very interesting to note the different strategies involved here. So let's take away bases and ships, and let's pull up the EP right away so you can see how much of a failure this guy is with the Hydrons. Okay, Hydrons, 48 EP, 48. This turn 26, 48 EP. We talked about 66, 65.5, 64. These ridiculous Hydrons are at 48. What are you going to do? All right, let's take a look. So, based on what we have here, we have one major planet, two minor planets, three minor planets, one developing, two mediums, so one major, two mediums, three minors, one developing, and 1, 2, 3 colonies, and a bunch of resources. So I would say that, generally speaking, that's not great. But but let's look at where this guy's spending his money. Why is this crazy guy expanding so slowly? Well, we saw in the previous games, or in the other turns, he had maybe 1, 3, 4, maybe 5 bases. How many bases does this guy have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Am I counting that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 bases built. That's dramatically more than anybody else. Also, let's look at their exploration fleets. Expeditionary, exploration. So whereas we saw 10, 11, or more with the others, and of course a distribution where they had prime teams on every single fleet, what do we see here? We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 large exploration freighters, which is very small compared to the other fleets, one small survey ship, and one prime team paired with a survey freighter. That is nothing compared to what the other players had. So what is going on here? Why is this player, moron, why is this player suffering compared to the other players and how they're progressing? Well, what do you think? There's a couple things to note. Every player in this game for Splintered Will, knows that there is a defined number of resources within their, we'll call it a bubble. So we know that. There's no sort of, those resources are there are there regardless. Exploring those hexes faster obviously gets you more EP sooner, but what's the advantage of getting more EP sooner? In the early game, in other games, you don't know where other players are. Are they close? Are they far away? Are you going to come across non-player characters or other planets that are going to have garrisons and sort of non-player character factions that are going to push back and fight you? Well, we know in this game that's not the case. Based on the current play style and everyone's experience so far, every planet we've come across within the initial area are all friendly and quickly join our empires. There's no resistance. There's no opposition. There's no friction to the expansion. And the other players that we've seen so far have taken extreme advantage of that, expanding very quickly. So what's going on with this bozo who's taking his sweet time? And is that strategy going to work out in the long term? Certainly in this early stage of the game, from all metrics that we can measure, at least based on the vassal map, this seems a little ridiculous. This player is definitely underperforming. There's nothing that this player is delivering that is better from a strategy perspective than the other players. The other players are much more successful just based on the EP. The EP, the reach, everything. So the question is, I guess a number of questions here. So one, is this strategy just the wrong strategy to play in this game? Because we know that there's a certain bubble of safety, and maybe this player just needs to push a little harder. Or is this cautionary approach, and I mean, the only thing we can sort of extrapolate based on this strategy is that this player is focused on defense and infrastructure to a large degree, right? They're building all these bases. Why? Why do we need to build all these bases? Well, they're building these bases and they're populating this as they go forward. Okay, great. But what's the advantage to that? Well, at this point, there is no advantage because there's no opposition, there's no friction, there's no nothing pushing back. What will be interesting to observe, and we've seen this with the Gorn already, the Gorn having encountered opposition, they have started to build a fleet, and they have combat effectiveness. So it'll be interesting to note to what degree and how quickly opposition causes damage to those other factions. Will they reel from the impact of bumping up against an NPC, or will something else happen? I don't know. We'll have to see. It'll be very interesting to note to what degree those NPCs slow down or stop the expansion of those other factions versus this player, because this player, as it stands right now, we don't have a fleet of ships if we bring back the ships here, there's no fleet of ships that are ready to populate and expand and go to war with anybody. But there are exploration fleets, but there's no major warships. But what we do see from this player is a couple things. You can see here that there is a YTG, a WTG, another YTG. So this person's been building tugs. Interesting. And you can tell by the defense factors of the tugs, they're cruisers. So this person, you can only build one cruiser per year. So this person has been building tugs for some time. And those tugs are what's facilitating the building out of the base network. So this player is investing a lot of money in building bases and tugs and the infrastructure. Is that worth it? We'll have to see. But definitely a different strategy compared to what we've seen so far. Let me slide over into the chat real quick while I pop up some other maps that we'll take a look at here in just a moment. All right, so let's slide into the chat and let's see what's going on here. Let's pop out this chat so I can read it. All right, here we go, sliding out. So we go to the very beginning. We have Jim and Bill and Matt Westmoreland in the house. Of course, Matt is teasing about turns. That's the thing about this game and the thing that builds up that anticipation. Where's my next turn? You have that moment of anticipation and then that that dopamine rush as you get your turn back, and then you submit your next turn, and you want that next series of turns back. So you want to see how that map is evolving. That is one thing about this particular game, is the sort of the delayed satisfaction or the delayed delayed gratification that you get from these turn-based games. Very addictive. So very interesting to see. What do we got here? So we got a number of coffees fired. Again, the Gorn mystery antagonist, Lord Lawless, and Pecker Khan voices his people's approval. So thank you very much for all those coffees, keeping us stimulated, motivated, and moving along. We've got, of course, Lord Lawless, Daniel, Pew Pew in the house. Who else we got here? We've got Jim, of course, It is a CL hull, he says. Oh, that must be referring to CL, right? CL is the Federation hull. Gorn WSL is on a light cruiser hull, he says. Okay, so the Gorn WSL that we saw, light cruiser. Hydrons are just late bloomers. Perhaps. Well, we'll see how that goes as we go forward here. Hydrons are so base. So true. Base 3 math versus base 10. Ooh, okay. Hiss, you can't be petty, says. Jim, come on, Tony. The Khanate of Paravian needs more rental monies from the space you are in that you are finding. Get your garbage scows out looking harder. Yes, as you can see, lots of teasing for this guy to be able to improve the ability to expand my borders as we go. All right, so let's pull up the Klingons and the Lyrins. And will I be able to pull up the Paravians? I don't know. We'll see. It's only how many of these maps can I pop up at any one time. Let's see here. I've got 1 and 2. Looks like I'm stuck at 2. All right. And of course, like I say, Vassal is not exactly the fastest, speediest, most light speed tool in the world. And so it just takes a little bit of time to be able to load these things up as we go. All right. So it looks like I got the Klingons up and running. And we will zoom into those bad boys. And looks like we've got the Lyrins as well, ready to rock. So let's slide on over to the map. All right. It looks to me like the sound effect for that second transition isn't working. You let me know in the chat if it is or is not. All right. Here we have the Lyrin faction, again in Splintered Cell. And let's pull this up. The Lyrins, boom, at 59.5. So on the lower end of the spectrum here, certainly better than the Hydrons. Ladies and gentlemen, another coffee has been fired. Who dares? Smitty has fired a coffee. Cheers, Smitty. Oh, yeah. Caffeinated goodness powering us going forward. That's right. Better than dilithium. Phasers, photons to full effect. All right, so here we are. We've got the Lyrins at 59.5 EP. And let's take a look as we pull away the ships and the bases to be able to see what he's got. This looks quite dense. For some reason, it looks more dense with the planets than the other maps that we've looked at. Maybe that's just my impression. We've definitely got a happy plus going on with a major and minor planet near the capital. And I betcha, where are you, Lyrin? If we pull up the Lyrin capital, boom! Yeah, we've got a happy plus at the homeworld with a YDK and an R&D team. Very interesting. Okay, so we've got happy plus all the way around in the home system. And then what else we got? On the extremities, we've got 1, 2, 3 medium planets. We've got 1, 2, 3 minor planets. We've got 2 developing and 1, 2, 3 colonies, it would seem. Okay. And let's pull up bases, see what they got. So one of the things about bases, it also includes planetary ground bases. Now, planetary ground bases are not supply nodes by any means, but they are extremely valuable, as we saw in the last game, at being able to defend planetary bodies. So interesting to note here that the Lyrin player has invested significantly in building and deploying YPGs. So you can see YPGBs, Y-era planetary ground bases on a number of these planets, as you can see, but only one true base, like YBS here. Very interesting. So YPGBs are relatively inexpensive to build, 2 or 3 EP to build, and the YBSs cost 10, and of course take 2 turns to build. So interesting to note that this player only has 1 YBS built, as we can see it here. Very interesting. Okay, cool. Let's pull up the ships. Ooh, look at all those exploration fleets. Okay, so we've got quite a few. Let's pull up the Lyrin fleet. Whoa. Look at all those. Okay, exploration fleet. Let's slide this over. Okay, we'll put it here for now. And maybe I can make it a little bit trimmer. There we go. That's better. Okay, so we have a number of exploration fleets, and you can see here, just like before, we have a number of survey ships, W and YSRs. So those are those survey warships. Built on cruiser hulls, you can see because of the 6 defense factor and 5 defense factor, respectively, with prime teams maximizing their ability to explore. And on top of that, we've got YFFs escorting them. In some cases, more than one. Interesting. So that takes a lot of money to build those ships and, of course, populate them with escorts and everything else. So the Lyrin player looks like they are very well equipped when it comes to defensive capability and to be able to defend those WSRs. And those survey ships are above and beyond the survey freighters. They're quite the investment, so it makes sense to be able to have escorts to be able to make sure that they're safe as you explore. But again, priming or pairing them with prime teams to be able to make them the most effective that they can be. Obviously, diplomats moving around, increasing planetary attitude. And you can see, based on the supply, let's assume supply 3 for this guy. And, okay, and then we'll pull up the Lyrin supply. Boom, look at that reach. Woo. So this player is definitely not going to run out of any territory to explore anytime soon. Lots of ability to keep pushing and expanding. And of course, like I said, there's a preset number of resources within this bubble. The question is, how far are they going to go before they bump into somebody? Very interesting. Okay, so that's the Lyrin player. Let's bump into... Oh, and before I go any further, I'll just close this one out. No. And then we'll go right into the Klingons. I got a soft spot for the Klingons. And pardon me as Vassal decides to load up the other one that I was waiting on. We'll just load up these guys here. So a couple of interesting notes. Ooh. Okay. So a couple of interesting things to see here. Let's start off with EP. We'll pull off the bases and ships initially. Let's pull up EP. And we can see here that the Klingons are at 64 EP. So again, right smack dab in the statistical average here, running on right down the middle. And 2 things of note, obviously. One, you see some purple on the screen, and this geographic feature, shall we say. Okay, let's take a look at their planets real quick. So we've got some Happy Plus on their major planet. And we've got the capital for the Klingons, which is also Happy Plus. Look at those PGBs waiting to be deployed, and an R&D team and a YDK. Very nice. Okay, so we got some planetary defenses. Good to go. We have a number of planets. 1 major, 2 major, 2 major planets, 1, 2 medium planets, 1, 2 minor planets. Looks like 2 developing, and then 1, 2 colonies. 3 colonies, excuse me, as well. Oh, I might have missed a developing planet there. There's 3. Okay, so quite the distribution. Again, takes us up to 65. And if we bring back bases, interesting. Again, look at this. So, yeah, very interesting. Okay, so YDK in the south, which is interesting. So YDK's, again, you build a YBS and then you upgrade it to a YDK. It's a 20 EP investment. So we got a YDK in the south. Why a YDK in the south? I'd be curious as to why build the YDK there versus anywhere else. But nonetheless, YDK there. Interesting. Then we've got a YBS here within 2 hexes of major planet. No, minor planet, excuse me. We've got a YBS right beside the capital. And then 4 hexes away, again, within the extended supply range of some of these supply nodes. We have a YBS here, and then a planetary ground base sitting here on this medium planet. Interesting. And of course, who have they bumped into? They bumped into a purple faction. And if we bring back ships, you'll see that they look like they're Romulans. The Romulans, so this looks like the NPC flavor of Romulans, with a planetary ground base and a YSN, a Y-era snipe. Now, why is that important? Well, again, this is a faction that's bumped into an NPC faction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hexes away from their homeworld. Interesting. No neutral zone border, which is interesting to note. But they've bumped into these guys here. So we got a bunch of exploration fleets. Let's Klingon exploration fleets. So with the exploration fleets, let's slide this over here. You can see again, we've got the D3Es, which are W-era survey ships, exploration ships. They are paired with prime teams. Some of them with escorts. So we've got a destroyer and a couple of W-era destroyers as well. Great ships, by the way. F4s and F3s, great ships for their time. Again, paired with prime teams for maximum effect. And, of course, an F4 with a YFEL and an F3 with a YFES. There we are. So the 2nd and 7th expeditionary fleets are up near that YSN. So the 2nd is this YFEL with a F4 for defense. And then the 7th exploration fleet is a D3E all by itself. So it'll be interesting to see, because if that YSN decides to pick a fight, it'll be, for the purposes of the rules, small-scale combat. Small-scale combat just means that it is most likely that one of these ships will retreat, maybe both, but it is highly unlikely that there'll be any significant damage inflicted on any one of these fleets, one way or the other. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. There's a lot of defense factors, relatively speaking, because these are just like one-ship encounters. But the question is, what else is on the other side of that fog of war? Are those Romulans a little bit more beefy than we might otherwise think? Who knows? And Jim in the chat is mentioning that, yes, this is the pulsar icon on the map. The question is, and we'll have to ask Robin, the GM for this game, what effect does the pulsar have? Now, certainly in this context, the pulsar is an obstacle. You can't go through it. Like going on a lion hunt, you can't go over it, can't go under it. Got to go around it. So we'll figure out what it is they do with that pulsar. But nonetheless, it's a sort of a geographic, topographical feature on the map. And what they can do with it, it just is like an obstacle. The question is, what else can it do, or does it do? What's underneath the WSN, Tony, he says. The WSN. There is no WSN. Are you referring to the YSN? The YSN has a YPGB underneath it. That for the Romulans, that is. So you can see here, YPG. There you go. So yeah, that's what that looks like. So very interesting with the Klingons. Again, this is second faction bumped into an NPC, and let's take a quick look at their fleet cap. You'll notice that the Klingons have 46 attack, 98 defense for fleet cap, and that's because, again, they've got a number of these destroyers paired with their survey ships. Excuse me. Again, all warships that bring a certain amount of attack and defense. Oh, so it's a planet. Oh, you're trying to ask, what's that? Yeah, it's a colony. That's what's there. So there's a colony underneath the YSN. That's what, when I take away the bases and the ships, that's what you can see. Colony in the top corner. All right. So that's that. Let's go on to the next one. And the next one is the Paravians. Who are these dirty, dirty birds? I have a sense that there is some foul play at work here. Let's see. Okay, let's take a look at the Paravians. Turn 25. Let's see. Okay, let's take away the bases and the ships, and let's take a look at what we got. All right, so we'll start with EP. The Paravians have 66.8 EP in turn 26. 66.8. Again, this is very much in the mean, looking very much on average, on the higher end of average. But interesting to note, 66.8. Where's that 0.8 coming from? That seems like a very strange number. Normally everything is 0.5 or rounded out. So let's just, actually, you know what? I'll just look at it straight up. Where are we here? Paravians. Okay. So apparently the planetary resources are giving us a weird number. And what do we got? Plus 5, 4, 4, 4.8. So the planet in 1314, which is a medium planet, at Happy Plus is giving 4.8 EP. Okay, so that's where that's coming from. I didn't realize that medium planets gave that kind of weird, wonky decimal point, but I guess that's the case. So 4.8 EP for a medium planet. That's where that's coming from. Okay, let's take a look. We've got a lot of work that's being done here, obviously, to improve planetary attitude. We've got a Happy at Skyhome, which is a major planet in their capital trifecta. I'm going to assume, let's go take a look. The Paravian capital is Happy Plus. And of course, this medium planet here is also Happy Plus. I would imagine, based at this major planet over here, Eagles, I can't quite see because the label is underneath the other markers. I'm going to assume that they are going to send something over there to improve the planetary attitude on the major planet first. But as you can see, we've got 2 major planets, 3 mediums, 4 minors, only one developing, and 3 colonies. Very nice. And of course, a number of resources. All right, let's pull up the bases and let's see what we got here. Again, another interesting distribution of bases versus what we've seen on some others. 1 base. Like we've got obviously we've got the YPGBs here, but only 1 YBS. Very interesting. Huh. Okay, so 1 YBS on turn 26 with this kind of reach. Let's take a look at their supply. So we'll set supply at 3. That seems to be where we're at. And the Paravians, look at that reach. Look at all that territory that still needs to be explored and within supply. So let's pull up the supply, pull up the ships. So a couple of interesting things here. 1, a lot of exploration fleets. So if we pull up their Paravian exploration fleets, we've got, so interesting. Look at this. We've got quite a few exploration freighters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 exploration freighters. In addition, we've got, of course, the small exploration freighter. We all started off with that. But you'll notice they're starting to build the YSR. That's their light cruiser. I believe it's a light cruiser-sized survey ship. So paired with a prime team for best results. Important to note that if you have a survey ship like the YSR or the WSR or whatever that is, if you have one of those survey ships, you cannot, according to our house rules, pair a prime team with a survey freighter. The prime teams are snobby, spoiled little kids, and they will only fly on the best of the best, i.e. the survey warships. So that's they won't fly on those freighters anymore. They got to be on the survey ships, and that's the way that goes. Pull that away, and what else do we have? This is another faction that has tugs. 1, 2, 3 YTGs, which is interesting because they obviously have spent some time building YTGs, tugs, but they don't have a lot of bases. Now, why is that? They've got the EP for it, but they haven't bothered to build it. So interesting to note. Very interesting to note. I wonder how this is going to evolve going forward, or to what degree they're going to build out their base network. But regardless, you can see here 3 tugs, just like the Hydrons, but not nearly as many bases built, obviously. A lot more hexes explored, as you can see here. And 66, what was it? 66.8? Was that our 66.8? There we are. 66.8 EP for the Paravians. Very interesting. Now, I have been prompted to talk about Woody the Woodpecker, but I don't see it on the map. Obviously, there is another map, which I don't know that we're going to have time to go over in today's episode based on how long this has already taken. But there is, I will give you a preview of things to come. The Paravians have built themselves a dreadnought. Not in turn 26, but for turn 31, they have built themselves a dreadnought. And there's 2 ways to build a dreadnought. One, you can build it in a slipway, but that technology on our tech tree is far, far in the future. So in order to be able to build a dreadnought at this early stage of the game, there's a series of rules in the F&E rule set around building battleships, the slow way. And so we adapted those rules to be able to build dreadnoughts the slow way. And so it involves spending 3 EP per turn. You roll a 1d6, and that number gets added to a number that you have to reach in order to be able to build your dreadnought. Now, that number depends on the technology of the dreadnought. Is it a Y? Is it a W? Is it a Y? Is it a M, early M dreadnought? It depends. So based on the defense factors, the GM will let you know what the number is that you have to hit. And then once you've accumulated enough points, you can build that dreadnought. But it's not guaranteed. It doesn't happen, obviously, in one turn. It takes many turns to build one, and they have built one. So I believe, if memory serves, and Jim will correct me if I'm wrong, it's, as Jim says in the chat, you can see there, it's a Big Pecker class. Big Pecker class. The YDM is named Woody, as in Woody the Woodpecker. So I will save you my Woody Woodpecker impression, but yes, Woody the Woodpecker, there we are. Okay, so let's close this guy out, and we will get ourselves up to, I'll slide over to the chat real quick, and I will load up the last couple of maps here for the Riemanns are the last ones that I have here ready to go. Once it loads up, of course. And then the progression for the other maps will be much faster because they're much smaller, and you will see what I mean when we get there. All right, so what do you think so far? You've been seeing the evolution of these maps up to this point. You've seen sort of an interesting consistency of strategy, with one exception being the Hydrons. What are your thoughts? What do you think is the better way to go when it comes to that? And I'll give you the last example here, which is the Riemanns. Sliding into the Riemanns, you can see here we have quite an interesting distribution. Let's pull away the ships and the bases right off the bat. The color scheme is a little busy, certainly, with the white and the black. But let's pull up EP right off the get-go and see where we are. So the Riemanns, the Riemanns have 71 EP, 71. They are by far the leader of the pack when it comes to this. Note the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 reach, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 hexes to the edge of their territory explored. Very, very interesting. All right, let's take a look. I don't see any planetary attitude improvements, but we've got 1, 2 major planets. We've got 1, 2 medium planets. 1, 2, 3, 4 minor planets. 1, 2, 3, 4 developing planets. 3 medium planets. Yeah, okay. So, and then colonies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like 5. But regardless, 71 EP is the total. Let's take a quick look at the Riemanns capital, and you can see they're indifferent. So if I'm the Riemanns right now, based on my planet distribution, first thing I'm going to do is use that diplomat to improve planetary attitude on the home planet, and then that major planet right below it. That will bump up their economy by as many as 3, and that will have a huge impact on them as they go forward. However, whatever they're doing is working, because boy, are they making some sweet, sweet coin. Let's look at their... Excuse me. Let me take a quick sip of my fantastic beverage. It just tastes sweeter when it comes out of this glass. I don't know why. Maybe you can tell me. Oh, I don't know what it is about this beverage. It's so refreshing. I don't know what it is. All right. Let's look at the bases here. We've got only two YBSs. So I've got planetary ground bases, no problem. But I've only got 2 YBSs under construction here. Very, very interesting. Oh, wow. Okay, so we're pulling up the ships. And one interesting thing I'm noting right off the bat is it seems as though the Klingons are using theater transports. So these are like mini tugs, for lack of a better way to describe it. They're like mini tugs, and if you combine them with each other, they can do things. So these theater transports, they can move. For example, they can carry a YPGB. You put them together, they can do a lot of similar tug missions as a tug, including building things, extending supply, things like that. So it looks like the Riemanns are using their KE-1T, this light theater transport, to great effect to move stuff around inside their empire. So that's fantastic. Let's take a look at the Riemann exploration fleets. Slide this over here. So this is really interesting to see. Very similar to the Klingons, okay? So we've got 2 large exploration freighters with an escort each. The KE-2 is a Y-era frigate. A YFES, small survey freighter. And then we have a bunch of the KD-3Es, which are the W-era survey ship for the Riemanns. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all paired with prime teams and an escort to make them the most effective that they can be. So very, very interesting. Let's look at their fleet cap real quick. You can see 49 attack, 114 fleet cap. So this is one of the biggest fleets in the game at this point. And I think the biggest thing here is really the combination of their survey ships plus these theater transports is just kind of bumping up their defense factors in a big, big way. But what's the other thing on this map that you may not be able to see? Let me slide this over ever so slightly. What do you see on the edge there? Oh, come on now, behave. It's hard to see, I know. I can't make it show up any further. On the very edge of the screen here, there is a DMZ. So they've discovered a DMZ of some type. What does that mean? Probably there is another faction on the other side of that DMZ. It's not a neutral zone. It's a DMZ. So I'm going to assume that whatever on the other side of a DMZ is going to be hostile, nasty, don't mess with it. What are the Riemanns going to do about that? I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see. Okay, let's slide back to the chat. Let's check in with everybody, and then we will slide through, much faster by comparison, the New Horizons maps in a moment. Let's take a moment to break, check in with our folks. Oh, yes. Okay, so Jim, based on our last coffee, we're going to say, whoop, whoop, Lord Lawless loves the Lyrins. What do we got? 9 hexes until lovely Lyrins likely locate loser Lethavors. Okay. Back against map edge, question mark, Smitty says, from that pulsar that we saw. What's underneath the WSN? The Romulan, Jim says. Yeah, so we talked about that was a colony underneath the Romulan. You Can't Be Petty is talking about Jim babbling away, as is always the case. Lord Lawless, almost every time I plan to build a base, newly surveyed planets extended supply, and I spent EP elsewhere. Well, it's fair, because as we've seen in this game, the strategy of using planets to extend supply, at the end of the day, seems to be the winning strategy. That's what's driving people forward, and that's what's making things work. So at the end of the day, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah. So 9 hexes hit a neutral zone. The Riemanns have in Robin's game. That's what Smitty says. Lord Lawless, I prefer to call them better Klingons. Whatever their name, their planet icons are kicking cool. I don't disagree. That is so true. Demilitarized zone, Jim says. Well, the demilitarized zone, would there be a militarized zone on the other side? So perhaps there is an opponent that we will have to encounter on the other side. All right. Let's talk about the New Horizons. Recentered. Okay, so New Horizons is the game that Daniel, our previous GM from New Worlds, is running. Very different campaign style than with Robin. So Robin and Splintered will, as we discussed, pre-planned maplets with pre-planned assets, resources, planets, and so on. Whereas in Daniel's game, for New Horizons, it's all generative, meaning that it's procedurally generative, meaning as we explore hexes, dice are rolled and there's the possibility that things will be discovered. There's a table and sort of process and how that's all discovered, and we will see the difference in this game. So now we're looking at turns about 5 turns before, so we're looking at turn 21 for New Horizons. Take note of the difference in scale of EP, so economies, what people have built, what people have done. Take a look and note the difference. So let's slide right in. All right, so here we are. This is the Federation. After all, let's start off with the big blue. Federation in the game of New Horizons. You can see here that they have, as we start off with EP, they have an economy of 21. Much different than the the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s of the other game. We have a much different distribution. We can see here that the Federation player has a number of fleets. Let's just take a look at Third Fleet just because it's there. Ooh! So the Federation player is starting off as Vulcans. Why do I say that? Because you can see here we have a WVF. This is a Vulcan frigate. And you'll notice that design is very reminiscent of Enterprise and the ships we saw in Enterprise, the Vulcan ships with that sort of ring around a center chassis or center hull type, paired in this case with a WSR, which is a W-era survey ship. You can see that is happening here. Let's take a look at Fifth Fleet by comparison. Again, very similar. And again, paired with a prime team. So third is at the top, fifth over here. Let's take a look at fourth. Let's do the round robin. Again, we can see here as a prime team with a WSR. And Second Fleet, let's take a look at Second Fleet. And Second Fleet, again, paired with a W-era frigate and a WSR doing survey work here. Now, we've also got Home Fleet at the center. So let's take a look at Home Fleet. What is in Home Fleet? Oh, my goodness. Okay, so a couple things here. We have a Vulcan cruiser of the Y variety. You note that it's got scout functions, but it only has one attack. So the attack factors suck, but it has scout functions. And the reason why that's important is because scouts, when you're doing exploration, size class is a factor and sensors are a factor. So whereas surveys get +2, survey ships get a +2 to explore, scout ships get +1. So it's just a little bit less. Pair a prime team with a Vulcan cruiser, and you got the same as a survey ship without any other perks. Additionally, we can see here we've got 5 YCLs that are paired up here. These, I believe, can all be upgraded to SRs, but that might involve a little bit more money. What else we got here? Let's take away the ships and take away the bases. And you can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 resources, a couple planets, and a colony. And most importantly, we have discovered a non-player faction. Developing planet, happy plus, meaning they like the feds. And everything is copacetic. Bring on the bases. You can see a interesting strategy on base construction going to the west. And based on what we can see here, we can see that the Federation player has 3 supply as they are reaching 3 out from their nearest supply node. Bring the ships in. We talked about the ships, and we got 2 convoys in the midst, obviously, of building bases and various things. But they've built out to the west, and these fleets are working hard to explore to the west. 21 EP, a number of survey ships, and doing its best, the Federation that is, to be able to explore. And they've discovered themselves an NPC. Moving on to the Klingons. The Klingons, with their EP, are at a total of 26. So once again, the Klingons are ruling the roost. Can't hate on my Klingon brethren. And what do they got? They've got quite a reach here. Let's take away the ships and bases. This is the very interesting. Look at this. We've got a distribution of the capital trifecta here, colony, minor, and capital. And look at how much they've explored to the east and not to the northwest or west. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes out to the east. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the northeast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the southeast. And like 2 hexes in the other direction. So very interesting to note. Let's bring back bases. And their base construction is gravitating to where they're being successful. You can see the base distribution. Again, 2 hex distribution here. Interesting that it's 2 hex distribution close to the capital, and then they go to 3 hexes beyond that. So very interesting to note the strategy here on the infrastructure construction, probably facilitating, I would guess, at this point, just maximum exploration, which makes sense, but that's probably what's going on at this point. Bring in the ships, and woo, look at all this. We got a lot of exploration freighters, large exploration freighters you can see here. A couple convoys doing their business. Red Fleet. Ooh, Klingon Red Fleet. What's going on? Martok, Kempek, Duras. So Duras has himself a exploration cruiser with a prime team making the most of that exploration. So you can see here, the reason why they're exploring so heavily to the east is because that's where all their exploration ships are. Yeah, there's a couple to the west, but really it's all pushing east. They're doubling down on what works and just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So very interesting to note. It'll be interesting to see how that works and where they are on the map. This exploration pattern would suggest this player is on the westernmost edge of a map. They're not exploring to the west. There's no urgency to do so. They're exploring to the east and the north, the east, and the southeast. Just saying. Moving on to these guys. Who are these guys? These are the Borak. Boring is more like it. Look at the small little bubble that these guys have created. Oh, by the way, I'm the Borak. So don't be shy. I'm beating up on myself here. So turn 21. These guys, let's take a look at their EP. 17. Jeez Louise, not doing so hot as we can see. We've got a diplomat and an R&D team on the capital. Let's take a look at the Borak. Borak capital is indifferent, so not doing a very successful job of improving the planetary attitude there. Those diplomats need a little cattle prod to get themselves in gear. What else we got here? We got a couple bases being built. You can see 1, 2 bases done. Y convoy seems to be in transit, going somewhere. And YFEL's doing their best to explore. Seems like we've got a 2 hex supply, possibly 3. And, of course, YFEL's doing their business, pushing to the edge of what seems like that supply. 3 exploration freighters, no more. Other factions have way more exploration. And YFES. Obviously, sitting on that 1 hex, not being very successful. Okay. What's their niche? So the Borak have what's called the mega phaser. That's their thing. So, like, for example, Klingons have disruptors. Romulans have cloaking device. The Federation have photon torpedoes. The Borak, they have 2 things. They have basically suicide kamikaze fighters later. And they have the Mega Phaser. That's their heavy weapon. So the Mega Phaser is a turret with a very powerful, almost like a Phaser 4 on it. And it can rotate in the context of Starfleet Battle, so the tactical ship-to-ship simulator. It can rotate and has great firing arcs and is a very powerful weapon. Good at range, very similar to a Mauler in many respects. Suicide fighters, yep. So the kamikaze fighters, but that comes later in fighter era. Early era, their thing is the Mega Phaser. Like I say, it's like a Mauler in many ways. Yeah, and they do get the Gatling Phaser later. Big bada boom broadsides. That's right, baby. All right, moving on to the ISC in New Horizons. So the ISC here you can see. Let's take a look at their EP. Their EP is 19. So again, the Borak are not doing very well relative to everybody else. So 19 EP, here we are. Let's take away their ships and bases. What do we got? Ooh, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4 resources in another colony. Very nice. Pop the bases back. 2 bases built, very similar to the Borak, which is good. So we see a consistent pattern there. We got a lot of folks building 2 bases, potentially a third. And ships. What do we got? We've got Destiny fleet. Oh, okay. Let's look at these ISC fleets. Okay, so named echelons. So you can see they have paired their large exploration freighters with a prime team and a frigate. Why? Because they don't have an exploration cruiser at this stage, which is why they can have that. And they're making the best of what they can do. Look at enforcement fleet all the way down here. Obviously, there is a possibility they have 3 supply, but this convoy may be providing extended supply to enforcement fleet for that reach of 3. Note how 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, no, it looks like they have 3 supply. That's my guess. And if they don't have it now, they'll have it very, very shortly. All right, let's take a look at their fleet cap, though. I'm curious if they have, 8 attack, 23 defense. They've got basically just survey ships and a couple frigates. Although, look at this. YCA 47. That's a juicy ship. The ISC have really good Y-era ships, like very tough. So yeah, looking good. Bill's confirming supply 3. Looks good. Looks good. All right, let's click into the Hydrons. Oh my goodness. These guys look like they're doing pretty well. Let's, what's going on here? Oh, I seem to be having a little bit of a glitch on my menu. I will have to, hold on. Yes, Vassal is not behaving appropriately. Let's pop up EP here. So 19 EP for the Hydrons, very similar to what we just saw with the ISC. Let's took bases and ships away. Oh, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They got quite a range of exploration already. And of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 resources found. Very interesting. Let's look at bases. 3 bases constructed, and of course, planetary ground base. I have a feeling that's because they have tugs. Look at this. We've got YFES, 3 supply. They're having their WSRs out and about. They've got, a WSR got crippled. I wonder what happened there. Did you bump into somebody? Or was it a random event? We'll have to see. So interesting. I don't see any tugs. Let's look at home fleet. Hydron, home fleet, musketeer. Interesting. So I don't see any tugs, even though that's one of the strengths of the Hydrons early on is tugs. But I do see WCCs. So WCCs are command cruisers with a 3 attack, 5 defense, excuse me. So good ships, but I don't see any tugs. And at this early stage of the game, I would expect tugs. Interesting. Yeah, I would have expected more tugs at this early stage of the game. Okay. But notice how successful they are at exploring. Like, look at the footprint that they have. Very, very good. So whatever they're doing is working from an exploration perspective. They're pairing up cruisers with prime teams and making the most of that while they have it. So very, very good. Sliding into the Lyrins of the New Horizons campaign. Again, this is very similar to the Borak, I would say. Let's look at their EP. Look at that. Bang on with the Borak, 17 EP. Let's take a look at what they got. Take away the ships, take away the bases. Okay, couple of resources and a colony. Bring back the bases, and you can see 1 base about to be finished in construction. Convoy completing that. It looks like they'll have another convoy pre-positioned to build a base as soon as that's done. WSRs with prime teams, it looks like, in full effect in stereo sound, along with some YFESs in support. Doing the bulk of the exploration work. Note the prime teams on the home system waiting for more WSRs to be built, I'm sure, with an R&D team doing its business. Let's take a quick look at the Lyrin capital. So indifferent. I would recommend a diplomat be built and try and help out with the planetary attitude, try and up that income. Certainly the Borak and the Lyrin need it. Sliding into the Carnavon. Look at these guys. Wow, Carnavon in both games are doing really well. Let's take away the ships and bases real quick. That's nice. That's a really good exploit. 1, 2, 3. Well, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 hexes in almost every direction with 4 to the southeast. Very nice. Very nice. Let's look at the EP. They've got 19 EP. Excellent. And let's take a look at their bases. Look at this. 3 bases already constructed. That's excellent. With the planetary ground base, of course, that was part of the beginning. And then look at all these ships. They got WC. Wow, we're gonna have to look at your fleet cap here. Hold on. Wow, 10 ship equivalents with the 17 attacks, 61 defense. Look at all these bad boys. Woo! Okay, so we got a bunch of WCAs, WCLs, WCAs, YFELs, and so on and so on. WDD as well, and a bunch of FFs on the homeworld. Very nice. Very nice. Looks like the Carnavon are doing an excellent job in getting ready for what's around the corner. And very blob or like uniform expansion pattern. Very, very nice. And the last but not least is this the Tholians? So the Tholians, let's take a look at home fleet. Tholian. Where are you, Tholian? Yeah, Tholian home fleet. They've got 3 WDDs at home, and let's take a quick look at their EP. 19 EP, so very similar to what we saw with some of the other folks. And let's take away their ships and bases. So 3 bases about to be finished. So a third one about to be finished. So very similar to what we saw with the trend, 2 to 3 bases being built. And from the ship perspective, 1, 2, 3, 4 large exploration freighters, 2 small exploration freighters, going out and really pushing that expansion. Looks like 2 supply is what they're currently looking at for their supply. All right. Okay. So we're at an hour and 36 minutes sliding into here. I want to thank you all for such a fantastic sort of inaugural, really catch-up session here. Let's slide to the chat. And things are looking good. Yeah. Go Matt. I can cheerlead the Tholians in this game. In SW, Splintered will. They are the evil ones, but here he loves them. All right. So for all of you that are joining us on the show, then you can also join us in our Discord channel. If you want to join us there, you can head over to coffee.com/New Worlds and join us on the coffee and Discord level or tier, and you can join us there. I will meet you all in the Town Hall channel here shortly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and I will talk to you all next week. Bye for now.